Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the National Museum of the American Indian. Thank you for coming and celebrating our first Hopi Festival with us. Have many of you been here all day or came yesterday? Anyone? Oh, a couple. So we're glad to have you here. I guess it's all new people. That's even better. I want to thank the Henry Luce Foundation and the National Museum of the American Indians National Council for helping make this happen, and of course, Tribal Council and the Hopi community in general for bringing these 27 delegates here. I also would like to acknowledge the ancestral caretakers of this land where we are in Washington, D.C., the Piscataway people. There are two federally recognized Piscataway nations. You can learn more about them right here in the museum on the second floor. We have a little exhibit called Return to a Native Place. So when you come out of the elevators, just take a minute to learn a little bit about the Native people of Washington, D.C. I also would like to acknowledge the vibrant and really just creative and brilliant community of Native people that live in Washington, D.C. today, make it their home, and are part of our community here at the museum. Right now, we're having a presentation, The Alternative History of the United States by Edward Cabote. Edward.
lo ho lol ma yesu ne he tim lô lô mát ye siêu ne inam tim katsi ta kjafti tuta ne lolo ma 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 Miagindi na vik emaing huaping angomu kwari adik at kapo winge ari sungopa vi weri miagindi kuidovi sidovi me in ko in lentawi an Hopi matsiwe honangwa. My name is Ed Kabote. I'm from the Hopi village of Songopave and the Tewa village of Capo Winge, aka Santa Clara Pueblo in northern New Mexico. My father's people are from northern Arizona, the Hopi Nation, which is who you're visiting today. And today I would like to share with you an alternative history of America is what I've entitled this presentation. This is kind of a good backdrop for this. This was, well, I'm going to be sharing artwork from both myself and my father and my grandfather. I'm a third-generation artist, and this is a recent work of mine, and this is a work that I entitled True American. And, you know, of course, it's a take on the American flag, but in this presentation, I'm going to challenge a few ideas about the greater culture's concepts of American history. And one of these things that we'll talk about today is what I consider the first war for religious freedom, documented war for religious freedom in what we today call the United States. And this war actually took place 100 years before the American Revolution between my people, the Puebloan nations, and Spain. And we'll talk about that as we go on, but what this history is going to be about is specifically that group of people. So I have 7 stripes here. When I talk about Puebloan people, who I'm talking about is the nations of Hopi, Zuni, the Tiwa, the Tewa, the Toa, the Kiris, and today the non-extinct Piro. They were part of us back then, but that culture no longer exists in the Southwest. But those 7 nations of northern New Mexico, northern Arizona, and really the entire Colorado Plateau. And just also to define the Colorado Plateau is a giant mesa. When you drive just north of Phoenix, you climb up onto it, and then it extends from just north of Phoenix all the way to about 2/3 of the state of Utah. There's a sliver of Colorado on the very western edge, and then a little bit of northeast New Mexico, what we call the Colorado Plateau. And this is a sacred land to the Puebloan nations, and it carries upon it the footsteps of our fathers and mothers. But this blue area in the flag represents that very area. You can see that it has a center star, and then around it are the 4 stars representing that sacred land of the Colorado Plateau that we today and many years ago and even for centuries have called our home. So I have Coyote here, and he's kind of sticking his tongue out because, he was here long before any of us started, squibbling about this and that and that and this. So he's the real true American right there, So when I talk about the Puebloan nations, I've already mentioned, I'm talking about 6 different language groups that exist today. One, again, is non-extinct. There's 36 Puebloan villages that exist today, 24 in New Mexico, plus the 12 villages in Hopi. We all carry in our concepts of the genesis of the human race an emergence concept. For one example, in one of the less sacred stories of the Tewa, my mother's people, there's the story about how we emerged into this world, and when we emerged into this world, we were blind. My father used to say you can be blinded by darkness, but you can also be blinded by the light, And I think Manfred Mann said something about that too. But at any rate, we heard this little voice that said, cover your hands over your eyes and then release them. And when we did that the first time, we could see a little more clearly. Or we could see a little bit, maybe blurry. And again, we were instructed to do it 4 times. And when we did it the 4th time, then we could finally see clearly. But there's many stories about emergence. And among the Hopi, it said that the emergence of the human race began in the Grand Canyon. Now, this is one thing. I was a very poor science student when I was growing up in high school. I don't know about you guys, but science was something I really had a difficult thing to wrap my head around. Because they would use all these big words that I could barely pronounce, to describe something I couldn't see, And it was really confusing to me. They said science is observation. You do things and you observe it and you see how it does it. You document it. That's science. And then they told me that the world was formed billions of years ago by a big giant explosion. But I was going like, well, if science is observation, I don't think any of you guys were here to see that. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of confused by it, I say this, that's a theory that I've been taught about the creation of the universe and the origins of mankind. If you ask somebody who's indoctrinated in the Judeo-Christian ethic, they'll probably tell you that human life begins in the Garden of Eden. Among our people, it's our belief that human life begins in the Grand Canyon, near the confluence of the Colorado River and the Little Colorado River, at the original kiva. A kiva, is much like what we're in right now. We're kind of in a kiva, We're in this area, and it's been sanctified by prayers. It's been sanctified by dances. So in a way, right now we're in a kiva. But we emerged from that original kiva into the world that we are, and actually right onto the landscape of the Colorado Plateau. This is my father's painting of what we call Sipapuni, that original kiva, that original emergence place. And you can see here that people of all colors are there, because it's our theory that all people emerged together with us. It wasn't just the Hopi, but rather it was all people groups that emerged from there and then spread in their migrations throughout the earth. If I could sum up what I've learned from my family as far as Hopi mythology, the great moral of Hopi mythology, I would probably tell you it's this, that human beings have a great talent for screwing things up, you know? And in the story of the emergence, you know, we were trying to leave behind, you know, things that were unhealed below, and we were seeking a new life above. But you can see there's this little gray-faced individual hiding in the bushes right there. And that represents the presence of Chuge in Tewa or Powaka in Hopi. This is an unhealed element that entered into our world. And really, it's plagued all of us. You know, we all have that unhealed side that challenges our cultures and challenges even our own individual lives. But it's from here, that place of emergence, that we begin migrations upon this earth. And you can see this migration zigzag line, you know. For us, the Colorado Plateau was our learning center. It was the place that we were taught things and places that we learned much about who we are and who we were to be. You can see that my father has an aerial view of Chaco Canyon. Somebody was just having this discussion with me. He said that about 20 years ago, he visited Chaco Canyon, and they told him that the people of Chaco Canyon were a disappeared society. And then he went last month or 2 months ago to Chaco Canyon, and they told him that the ancestors of Chaco Canyon were in Hopi, you know. So this is kind of science catching up to our own people, you see. These places that the scientists call ruins, we would never refer to them in such a disrespectful way as that. These are not ruins. These are the footsteps of our fathers. These are the footsteps of our mothers. And this is the way we refer to them. It was while we were on these migrations that we attained our identities and our particular ways. There's many stories about the various clanships and their migrations. One example would be the Snake Clan, and my grandfather painted this at the Watchtower at the Grand Canyon back in 1932. And he chose to depict this story because of the Watchtower's proximity to the Colorado River, right down below. So you can see here to my left and your left is the father, and he's giving instructions and he's giving pahos or prayer offerings to his son, because his son's going on a very difficult and spiritual journey. And you can see in the next panel that in that archetype of structure, there's the young man floating down the Colorado River. Now, this is one of the things I want to challenge about American history, because if you go to the Grand Canyon, they'll tell you that the first guy to go down the Colorado River was Major Powell, you know, who did also made a career out here in Washington, D.C., you know. However, in our memory, the first man to go down the Colorado River was about 1,200 years before Major Powell. And so this young man, you can see that the arc is going down the canyon. You can see the walls of the canyon on either side. And so today, the Colorado River is considered to be our continent's most endangered river. Its waters have been chopped up and bought and sold between states and countries, and it no longer makes its way home to the Gulf of California, the Sea of Cortez, and the Pacific Ocean. And in our hearts, I believe this is something all of us should be grieving for. But back then it did. And so this young man, all the way traveling into Mexico, possibly beyond, but he married there because, you know, no good story is complete without a little bit of romance, right? So this young man goes, he falls in love, and then he follows the river all the way back to his home, which is on the border of Utah and Arizona. And then, so in our culture, we don't become what our father is. We become what our mother is. So this union represents a brand new people group on the Colorado Plateau when they returned from the south. And their children now are known today among our people as the Snake Clan. And, you know, they still carry out their ceremonies there in Hopi. All right. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of twist, because I'm a musician, and actually, specifically, I have a reggae band called the Yotes. The Yotes, which is short for coyotes, because we're howling for the people and lands of the Colorado Plateau. What are we howling about? We're howling about 500 open-pit uranium mines that exist today on the Navajo Nation from the Cold War. We're howling about the 2/3 of our population that actually has running water in their homes in Hopi that can't drink from what comes out of the faucet because of arsenic contamination. We're howling about the only operating commercial uranium mine in existence in the United States today, which is threatening the water system of the Ute Mountain Ute people. That's the White Mesa Mill. We're howling about the only continually used active uranium mine in the state of Arizona, threatening the water systems of the Havasupai Nation, and that's the Grand Canyon mine. So if you visit the Grand Canyon, another thing that they're probably not going to tell you, but you're right next to a uranium mine. Of course, you know, all of the tribes have outlawed such uranium mining practices on their nation. However, it doesn't stop mining companies from picking up properties that border reservations, you know. Anyway, we'll talk about that as we go on, or maybe we'll come back to it. But I'm just pointing out that reggae music came to Hopi in the late 1980s. And I'm giving you all this history to make a point. In the late 1980s, Burning Spear, maybe early 1980s, Burning Spear came out to Hopi and performed a concert, Burning Spear being a Jamaican artist. The Cultural Connection, which is a group from Hopi, brought them out to Hopi. And this started a whole very unique relationship with Hopi and the island of Jamaica. We call it an island-to-island relationship because Hopi is a reservation inside a sea of the Navajo reservation. We're completely landlocked and surrounded, so we're a little island ourselves. And the island of Jamaica, of course, is surrounded by water, so it's an island-to-island relationship. Most of Bob Marley's sons have played our reservation. Kaimani Marley, Stephen Marley, Damian Marley, they've all played our reservation. My band, the Yotes, we've been invited to open up for Black Uhuru and the winners of the Grammy for Best Reggae Album 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Morgan Heritage, the family band, you know. So I'm pointing all this out because people ask us, what is that relationship between you guys and reggae music? And then I try to explain to them, you know, it's very simple if you think about it. In 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue. Within 100 years of Columbus's landing, the Native American population of the Caribbean islands is virtually wiped out. They're wiped out by slavery, they're wiped out by disease, and they're also wiped out by suicide because it's said that the Caribbean island natives made very poor slaves. They would rather kill themselves and their children rather than to submit to slavery. So the slave population had to be replaced, so they imported slaves from the continent of Africa. So when you think of the island of Jamaica, when you think of the island of Haiti, you don't think of people of Native American descent, you think of people of African descent. And this is a group of people that were enslaved for generations. This is a group of people that have lived for centuries under the oppression of the greater culture. We kind of relate to that, you know? And then reggae music infuses a very strong, undeniable sense of spirituality into the music. And so all of a sudden, the suffering has purpose. And it becomes very proactive, very positive, very joyful, in fact, even though it is rebel music and it's bringing attention to social injustice. We relate to all of that, you know. To be honest with you, when I hear some of Bob Marley's songs, it's like he's singing about us, you know. He's singing about us. But we have a venue called The Legacy out in Hopi. So anyway, that's what this is. And I just put this slide up just so that you remember that this is all part of that missing history of America. Because in America, we say in 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue, and then we fast forward 115 years to Jamestown in 1607, and Plymouth, 1620, 1621. We leave out the conquest and pillaging of Mexico. We leave out the conquest and pillaging of South America. We leave out the very first European settlement in the United States, which is actually St. Augustine, Florida, 68 years before Jamestown. We leave out the second European settlement in the United States, which is about 10 miles from the village I grew up in, Capote, my mother's village, and that's San Gabriel, New Mexico, established in 1598. Those are 16th century European settlements as opposed to Jamestown, and Plymouth, which are 17th century European settlements. So we come onto the pages of history very early, 1539, 1540. All right. Should I answer it? All right, cool. Let me try to catch up. So in 1539, the same year that St. Augustine, Florida was established, there was an expedition that came up from Mexico to visit the Southwest. This was led by Estevanico. So this is kind of funny, because in the Southwest, the first white man that we ever saw was not a white man. He was a black man. And he wasn't a Christian. He was a Muslim. He was a Muslim slave that had been part of the shipwrecked Nervice expedition in Florida. And the shipwrecked members, I think there were only like, Cabeza de Vaca was one of the survivors, Estevanico, I'm not sure exactly who else, but they walked the entire length of the continent. It took them years to go from Florida all the way across, encountering various people. They walked all the way across, ended up in Mexico. And when they finally got to Mexico City, they claimed to have seen one of the lost 7 cities of Cibola. In Spain, there was a legend that when the Moors invaded Catholic Spain, there was an exodus of people, and 7 bishops were part of that exodus. And they established 7 fabled cities of gold in some land called Cibola. So when Estevanico came back down to Mexico, he claimed to have seen one of these 7 cities. And he led the expedition the next year, 1539. 1540, the Coronado expedition also went into New Mexico in search of these cities, into the Southwest, out to Hopi, and that's when the first European guy to look at the Grand Canyon. But it wasn't until 1598 that the first settlement was made. Now, between 1598 and 1680, our people lived under a very oppressive regime, Spanish regime. I want you to think back in your history. Now, this is pretty good collective world history. What was happening in Spain in 1539? The Inquisition was in full swing, and that's exactly what was brought to the Americas. We were victims of the Inquisition. Between 1598 and 1680, our religion was outlawed in the Southwest. Spain took over forcibly all of our villages, and our religion was outlawed. And Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is, a very popular tourist spot for people to visit to experience the cultural harmony, that's there. Santa Fe, New Mexico, in my mind, should receive the same reverential treatment as Ground Zero, because Santa Fe, New Mexico is a place that our people's blood was shed not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but over and over and over and over and over again in its history. The Santa Fe Plaza was a place of public execution of our people. And in 1675, there was such an execution. Our medicine men that were accused of witchcraft were hanged, and those accused of lesser crimes were scourged. One of the men that was scourged was a Tewa man by the name of Pope. And he relocated after this experience to the most northern of the Pueblo villages in Taos, New Mexico. And from there, he received, from Poseyemu, he received a concept of rebellion, a concept of revolution. Throughout the summer of 1680, runners were dispatched throughout northern New Mexico and northern Arizona. Because under Spanish rule, it was illegal for our people to own a horse. So the news of the revolt was carried by relay runners over a 500-mile distance. You've already heard from Coach Baker about Hopi running, and about Louis Tawanitma. Actually, we have a picture of him pretty soon. But Louis Tawanitma, who was arrested in 1906, for being a hostile. We'll talk about that also. But he ran in the 1912 Olympics and silver medal in the 1912 Olympics and was considered the fastest man alive in long distances between 1910 and 1930. I'm just trying to shed light on our running tradition. News of this revolt was carried by runners who carried knotted cords. Each one of those knots in the cord represented a day, and they gave these cords to the war chiefs of each village with the instructions to untie a knot at the dawning of each day. When the last knot would be untied, that would be the signal for all of the villages simultaneously to revolt all over northern New Mexico and northern Arizona. The greater culture refers to July 4th of 1776 as Independence Day. Our war for independence took place 100 years before the American Revolution. August 10th of 1680 is what we acknowledge as our Independence Day. This is Pueblo Freedom Day. This is the day that our people, and I say this with all humility and with all gratefulness and really, in acknowledgement with all of the struggles that all Native people of the Americas have gone through, but we became the only group of Native American people in all of documented history to oust and establish European colony from our homeland. Thank you. This is my grandfather's painting. My grandfather's got a little sense of humor. In 1976, you can see here, back in 1976, for the bicentennial birthday of America, my grandfather was approached and commissioned to do a celebration piece honoring the history of America. Our concept of American history is quite a bit different, than the general culture's concept. And so what he chose to depict was the destruction of the church at our village at Songopave during the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. Missionaries were particular targets during this revolt because of their abuses to our women and their abuses to our children. Most of the missionaries, if not all of the missionaries, were killed. The rest of the colonists were allowed to surrender and retreat to around the El Paso area. 12 years later, the Spanish returned. And when the Spanish returned, they retook New Mexico. By force, they reestablished Santa Fe as the capital city. As I said, Santa Fe is considered to be the nation's longest continuously used capital city. They also claimed to control northern Arizona, the same area, Hopi. They also claimed to control our area. And probably the largest post-revolt mission was established in Hopi. But because the men of Hopi, or the other villages in Hopi, considered Catholicism to be witchcraft, in 1700, the village of Owatave was completely destroyed by our own people. All of the men were killed in the village, all the missionaries, including all of our own men. And even something that is very troubling probably to our own remembrance is the fact that some of the women and the children were also killed in this. This is what my father is showing here in this slide. And you can see that everybody has a gray face now. All of us now are unhealed. All of us are touched by this sickness now, you see. This took place in 1700. I want to point out there was no Washington, D.C. in 1700. The history that I'm sharing with you up till this point, this is all pre-United States history. This is our experience with Europeans before any of any of that even happened, you know. So we were virtually left alone for 200 years. We went back to our traditional way of life in Hopi. This is part of my father's mural. My father was always very open about his struggle with alcoholism. The man that I grew up with was a very different man that I knew when he passed away. I have utmost respect for my father, you know. But in his journey of seeking healing, he was also looking at other healing philosophies. And he shows here Ahula, the Kachina priest, next to Buddha, because he saw a parallel in our philosophy. And the parallel is simply this, that life is suffering. You know, Hopi, if you visit us, it's not a place that has rivers. It's not a place where we irrigate. It's 100% dry farming there. We're 100% dependent upon the answers to our prayers for rain for our very livelihood in order to eat. This is a pattern that has existed there on the Colorado Plateau for centuries. And this was the wisdom of our fathers. Because like I said, the moral to me of Hopi mythology is simply this: human beings have a great talent for screwing things up. Our fathers understood this. So we were led by the Creator to a specific place where the inheritance that our children would receive would not be material. It wouldn't be material riches. Rather, it would be hunger. It would be thirst. It would be heat. It would be cold. And in being reduced to those basic elements of life, our focus then would be upon the spiritual. It would be a spiritual heritage that our children would experience and receive, and this would make us a lasting people. And to be honest with you, it has. Because even though we're first contact people, we're actually also last contact people. Because after Spain made its exit, we were virtually left alone until the United States version of America caught up to us 200 years later. After the long walk of the civilized tribes, after the establishment of Indian country, after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, after the millions and millions dollar hunt for Geronimo, after the execution of Crazy Horse, and after the Battle of Wounded Knee, this is a picture just showing the aftermath of Wounded Knee, women and children, you know, there. The ironic story that the women and children were rounded up. These were like maybe 40 survivors after the Wounded Knee massacre there on the plains. They were put into a church because they weren't allowed to be seen with the army wounded. There was a little girl that was crying for water, and when they gave her water, it just came right out of her throat because she had been shot through the throat. The attending physician was a Civil War physician Civil War was a hand-to-hand bloody war. But the attending physician said, "I've never seen women and children shot to pieces like this, and I can't stand the sight of it." This took place on December 27th of 1890, kind of bringing to a close the Indian Wars. The ironic thing, in the church, it was still decorated with Christmas greenery and a banner that read, "Peace on earth, goodwill to men." So after that, the last decade, after 1890, after all of these conflicts, the government returns its attention, the United States government turns its attention upon this forgotten group of people in northern Arizona known as the Hopi. We've never had an armed conflict with the United States. We value pacifism. We're not true pacifists. You know, you can push us too far, but it takes a lot to provoke that. The United States government labeled both my grandmother's family and my grandfather's family as hostiles because they refused to send their children to school. The leaders that refused to send their children to school were rounded up in the last decade of the 1800s and shipped off to Alcatraz Island. And this is a picture from that, a historic picture of the Hopi prisoners there. The next decade, 1906, my great-grandfather, he's standing right above me now, Lolo Ma'yama. He was arrested and sent to prison for refusing to send my grandfather to school. The old men were sent to prison, the older men. The younger men, like Louis Dawanitma, were sent all the way to Carlisle, Pennsylvania to be part of General Pratt's movement, Kill the Indian, Save the Man boarding school experience, where we were forbidden to speak our language, punitively punished. What they don't tell you in the textbooks is that our women were told that they were receiving free health care when really they were having their tubes tied to render them infertile. All of these things took place in that boarding school experience. My great-grandfather, like I said, was in prison in 1906. My grandfather was 6 years old then. My grandfather ran away from school till he was 15 years old. Then he was sent to the Santa Fe Indian School. My father was sent to Lawrence, Kansas for boarding school. I graduated from the same boarding school as my grandfather, the Santa Fe Indian School. I point that out to you so you have a context for what's going to happen next in this next slide. This is showing the extraction of coal and water from the joint use lands of the Navajo and Hopi. Between 1970 and 2005, the world's largest strip mining operation was the Black Mesa mine in Arizona. I want to just point out before I go on that if you look at the website for the Navajo Nation, it will tell you that in the 20s, the Navajo Nation was established with the constitutional government, mirroring the United States for the sole purpose of oil companies to explore the reservation, for resources. That's basically what governments were set up for. They educated us to the level they wanted us to be. In my grandfather's case, he said they graduated them at an 8th grade. My grandfather said they couldn't even put together sentences in English with an 8th grade education. That doesn't sound like an 8th grade education. It's in the midst of that the government is requiring us to create a black and white document that mirrors their constitutional system, totally usurping the government systems that we've had for centuries. And the purpose of that? The Black Mesa mine, Hopi was given 3.3% for the market value of coal. We were paid $1.67 for every 326,000 gallons of water. The water was needed to send the coal via sludge slurry, another black snake pipeline, 400 miles away to the Mojave generating station so that people in Los Angeles, San Diego, Phoenix, and the excesses of the Las Vegas Strip, people there, they could experience their heated pools, air-conditioned homes. Meanwhile, I didn't grow up with water and electricity with my family in Hopi. There was not those resources. Now today, a lot of people have running water, but there's still people that don't have running water or electricity in Hopi. And I've already mentioned those that do have running water in their homes, 2/3 of the population can't drink from it because of arsenic contamination. But I think that's a lot better than the uranium contamination that the Navajos have to deal with. So, along with these scourges came another doctrine from the United States, the concept of relocation. That is taking Native American people from the reservations, placing them in communities, throughout the big cities of the United States so that they could, live new lives. And this is what people were exposed to, a modern diet. Diabetes, you can see that this man's legs are amputated. Alcoholism, cirrhosis of the liver, drug addiction, and suicide. I want to point out to you today that these are plagues of all societies. There's something that really kind of fires me up when somebody says to me, yes, but don't you Native Americans have a reaction to alcohol? And I'm always like, well, don't you have a reaction to alcohol? You know what I mean? These are plagues. I mean, I can visit any big city in America. To be honest with you, I am so inspired when I visit the monuments of Washington, D.C. I'm inspired by the movements that truly reflect the values of liberty and justice for all. But I'm shocked. I am totally shocked by the homelessness that exists in this city. And it's a very distinct color. It's a very distinct color marking, that I see. And it's grieving because this is the experience of our people as well. This is what we're experiencing and we continue to experience. As I said, the only existing uranium mine in the state of Arizona, threatening the water systems of the Havasupai. The only existing uranium mill in the United States, threatening the water systems of the Ute Mountain Ute Nation. This slide here is a prophecy of my father's people. My father's people, they were originally Corn Clan, and as they traveled from the south, they split into smaller clan groups. Pikyashwangwa, the shriveled corn people, Navangwa, the Snow Clan. But it kind of sounds strange, but the Snow Clan had its origins. My father's people had their origins way deep down in Mexico, in a place my father's called Spalatpavi, or others Spalatquapi. And this was a red city way to the south. I visited an exhibit recently on Teotihuacan out at the Los Angeles County Museum. They said that entire city was painted red. But that city there, because the people were caught up in a pursuit of comfort, not thinking about how it affected their environment or the people around them, they became sick. And their leader cried out, for supernatural help. And the entire city was destroyed by Palulokang. The Mayans call him Kukulkan. Hopis call him Lulukan. Palulokang, the water serpent. Kukulkan, Lulukan. That's not a coincidence to me, because I saw some people today from El Salvador, and I said, oh man, you guys are our brothers and sisters right here, But here, there's a story among my father's people that in the future, when we again fall into this state of corruption, universally, that a brother and sister twin will be brought to Palulokang and he'll receive them and he'll instruct them in responsible truth. And they'll in turn give that back to us. But my father's playing with his own prophecy here. You can see that he says, well, in the Judeo-Christian story, it was the original brother-sister twin who messed everything up by eating the apple. So maybe in the Hopi version, the brother and sister twin will restore everything with the Apple computer, and blast out responsible truth via the World Wide Web. That's my father's take. That's not necessarily my idea, but anyway. This mural, the main mural that we've been looking at today is called The Journey of the Human Spirit. This mural depicts the journey of the Puebloan people, their emergence into this world, their migration, their troubled past, their seeking of restoration, and our future hope. When my father passed away, I did this mural in his memory. And the mural is basically also showing that the same journey that I've just described is not only the journey of Hopi, but it's also the journey of each one of us as individuals. Because we all have our place of conception and emergence into this world. We all have our experience interacting with the spiritual, but our ego gets in the way. And we receive messengers to help us and guide us along the way, but we generally don't listen until we get the royal beatdown. And that's when we finally become converted. And we become truly Hopi. Because the greater culture uses the word Hopi to refer to a geography. Are you from Hopi? Or to describe a language. Do you speak Hopi? But you know, the way the word is most commonly used among our own people is to describe a state of being in harmony with the cycles of the sun and the moon and with your fellow man. Many people don't want to really say, I'm Hopi in that sense. I'm trying to be. I'm seeking that. In 1988, the year I graduated, Bobby McFerrin wrote a little tune called Don't Worry, Be Happy. Immediately after that song came out, there was a t-shirt circulated in Hopi, Don't Worry, Be Hopi. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to play you a little tune called Don't Worry, Be Hopi. Give me just a sec. I'm playing with the loop station, so it takes me a second to get this set up, but check this out. Well, here's a little song, you know. I changed the words to give it a cultural flow. I said, don't worry, just be Hopi. In the beginning of time, we came into this land to leave our strife behind. Follow Mesa's plan, he said, don't worry, just be Hopi. Come in 1539, they tried to change our ways, but we were doing fine. We said, nah, don't worry, we just be Hopi. 1680, we kicked the Catholics out, and oh, what of his sorrow proved there was no doubt, yeah. Don't worry, just be Hopi. So there's a little bit of history review, and then this next break bringing it all back up to date. So still today we have our trouble, the United States. They tried to bust our bubble, they say, don't worry, just be Hopi. Peabody coal has been full of lies. They say they don't know why our springs run dry. They say just stay in your corner of northern Arizona and be Hopi. Yeah, there's the... Oh, man. Hang on, I was gonna say there's the snowball, but I gotta make this a little more understandable. You all know about the Bears Ears? The shrinkage of the Bears Ears monument? All right. Yeah, there's the Bears Ears, there's the canyon mine, the desecration of our sites and shrines. And still they keep on telling us, don't worry, be Hopi. So many things in this world we see, we cry, is ukyo, itampas noan ka Hopi. Don't worry, yeah, just be Hopi. And don't worry about a thing now, because every little thing is gonna be alright. Thank you so much. Herango navi sedo ing navi kuyo ing kunda waha sengiri ho navi kemaing. You all go with blessings. Thank you so much for listening. Blessings.